All right, now, before we dive into this week, only 2 games to discuss, but there's a lot in depth in one of these things that I want to discuss. And I know that you're going to be along with me on this ride.
You know that?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. But I'm going to take us back. I want to go back in history a little bit, and you're going to like this, okay? I'm going to go all the way back to 2018. The Indianapolis Colts lose Week 6 to the New York Jets, Matt Youmans.
Looks bleak at that point.
They're 1-5.
Yeah.
They're giving up 30 points a game. Their offense scoring 24 or fewer points in 4 of those 6 contests. All but lost.
You would think so, but Frank Reich found a way to rally the troops.
That's right. End the season 9-1 straight up, 6-3-1 against the spread, win a playoff game and lose in Kansas City in the divisional round. Now, Andrew Luck was the quarterback. But
it was cold that day. He wasn't a real good cold weather quarterback.
He wasn't.
I watched it.
I watched it on the couch of Michael Lombardi. He invited me into his home. It was one of the saddest.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was one of the saddest moments of my life. That was when I was making those trips out to New Jersey. I got to watch that in the home of Michael Lombardi, and I may have cried in his living room. No, I didn't.
Is that why you guys don't talk anymore?
That's why we don't talk. He views me as a lesser man because of that day.
Too soft.
But I bring this up because one, Frank Reich has a history of kind of pulling teams, right, especially this Colts team, out of the mud when they're looking like nothing's going right for them. But the Colts are also starting to show signs of life now over the last 3 weeks, both offensively as a whole and Carson Wentz. So let's get to the offense first, because if you look at the last 3 games for the Indianapolis Colts, they are 2-1 straight up, a perfectly winnable game against Baltimore, by the way, the one that they dropped. 3-0 against the spread. Their offense has improved greatly, 27.6 points per game. But we're going to take you to those 3 metrics right there at the bottom. Rushing yards per game, top 5 in the National Football League over the last 3 weeks, 145.3 rush yards per game, 5.1 rush yards per attempt on the ground, and the offense as a whole, 7 yards per play. The offense has suddenly become explosive. We're talking about big plays, right? We see the big plays against the Houston Texans. We saw the first touchdown against the Baltimore Ravens. Like, all of a sudden, these chunk plays are starting to happen for the Indianapolis Colts. And here's the thing with Indianapolis, because it's not just the run game, and Jonathan Taylor has been absolutely incredible. Very quietly, Carson Wentz has become a little bit more like Carson Wentz in that year in which Philadelphia won the Super Bowl, right? That was when he was at the peak of his powers and when he had Frank Reich as his quarterback coach.
Yeah, if you think about going into December that year, he was, I thought, the leading candidate for MVP before he wrecked his knee at the L.A. Coliseum.
Yep, absolutely. So let's walk through a couple of the things with Carson Wentz. And there's more to this than just this nice little graphic. We'll get to more of them. But the PFF grade for Carson Wentz over the last 3 weeks, 87.4. He's the 4th best quarterback in the National Football League over the last 3 weeks by PFF's grading system. He has completed 69% of his passes for 9.8 yards per attempt. He has thrown 6 touchdowns and committed just 1 turnover-worthy play. And we'll dissect this even more because running game, offense, big part of what the Colts do, right? If you look at play action humans, the 3rd best quarterback from a passing standpoint is none other than Carson Wentz over the last 3 weeks. 2 guys in front of him, Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan. Of course, those 2 have only played in 2 games. One was on a bye, one was injured. So Carson Wentz over the last 3 weeks, arguably one of the best quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually,
passer.
too, because we know Pete Carroll wants to run the ball. And, in fact, that's going to be a big part of the Seahawks game plan for Monday night is running the ball to help out Geno Smith. You're talking about play action. That's what Arthur Smith and the Titans were all about with Derrick Henry.
Yep.
And that was a big part of Ryan Tannehill's improvement, right? Was the fact that he worked off play action because you had Derrick Henry who was such a rushing threat. So it makes sense that when Jonathan Taylor steps up in this Colts running game, becomes a threat, to Carson Wentz's numbers are going to improve. I looked over the last 2 games, 36 for 55, 625 yards, 4 TDs, no picks. Carson Wentz has been outstanding. I would say the one thing, if you're going to make a counter argument to all this, is say 2 of those 3 defenses were the Dolphins and the Texans.
Correct. And I think, so to counter your counter, I think one of the things that is the positive, though, is it's not so much, I think the argument you make is these numbers don't sustain themselves, right? Because these are clearly astronomical numbers that he's putting up. But it's that the Colts have shown improvement against those lesser teams. And one of those was Baltimore, by the way, a pretty decent defense in their own right to a certain extent. But the fact that he has just looked more comfortable, right? He's taking steps forward, and I think that's the positive thing. And the last note on Wentz over the last 3 weeks, and we'll spin this forward to the big picture here. Not only are we talking about as an overall passer, not only are we talking as a play-action passer, the 3rd best quarterback over the last 3 weeks in passes, 20 or more yards downfield. On throws, 20 or more yards downfield, Carson Wentz over the last 3 weeks is 7 of 11, 63.6% completion there, a little bit over that. 3 touchdowns, 5 big-time throws, those are by PFF metrics, and 0 turnover-worthy plays. Average depth of target on those, 31.1 yards downfield. So, and like that was what made Carson Wentz pretty special. If you remember back to those Philly days when he was, again, at the peak, he was throwing balls downfield, he was accurate downfield, and he started to show that yet again. If you look at his adjusted accuracy downfield, that's just literal accuracy, catchable passes, 81.8% over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're looking for, right? Do I think he's going to be, passer rating or passing grade of 97 going forward for PFF standards? No. But do I think that this offense is starting to find its stride? And one of the most important pieces here as you move forward with the Colts, it's not only improvement. You know who comes back to practice this week? Quentin Nelson, right?
Oh.
You know who? The injuries were such a big part of what happened with Indianapolis at the beginning of the season.
Talking about it, offense was that Quentin Nelson,
right?
Other guys on the offensive line, T.Y. Hilton.
Yep.
Here's the thing about Carson Wentz. I think Frank Reich knows how to get the best out of him. He also knows that, he's got to stay healthy physically, but he also had to repair him mentally and emotionally because he had a lot of scars from Philadelphia. He played behind a bad offensive line. He got beat up. He was injured. Took a lot of criticism. We had other guys on this network who were just ripping the crap out of Carson Wentz and giving up on him, saying he's a terrible quarterback. I've heard guys on this network say that. If you think that about Carson Wentz, you don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks.
Yep.
He's got all the skills. You just got to bring it back out of him. He's still got it in him to be a great quarterback. He's a franchise quarterback, and Frank Reich knew that, and that's why he made a deal for him. So I think there's a lot of upside here with the Colts. As long as Wentz can stay healthy, that offense could be really good. And you're seeing it with the running numbers, the play action, how it's going to work off that. And you get T.Y. Hilton on the field. There are going to be some big plays. So I think there's a lot of upside for the Colts. A lot of times people overreact to what happens in the first third of the season. Really, what's more important are the second 2/3 of the season. And, I like the Colts this weekend. I see a 4.5 out there. I think that number is a little bit too much against a San Francisco team that's lost 3 in a row and it's got kind of a quarterback dilemma right now.
Yep, and that's to me as we move forward with this, right? Because it's always about, okay, so we have all this, what do we do with it? So there's two things. One, we're in agreement. I think the Colts would be very alive here against the San Francisco 49ers. Running game, keeping them safe. There is a chance that Quentin Nelson could even play this weekend against San Francisco. So that's obviously a really big boon for them from a health standpoint. T.Y. Hilton did get banged up in the Texans game, but all indications are that he's fine.
Yep.
So the wide receiving core is getting healthier. But then the other part of this is the Colts right now are plus 150 to make the postseason. They're plus 350 to win the AFC South with the 19th hardest schedule left in the National Football League.
I'll take that plus 350. Give me that plus 350 on the Colts to win that division. And that bet took a little bit of a hit Monday night with the Titans getting that lucky win.
Yep.
But still, I think you got a long way to go, and I think the Colts are the better team.
So I think really that's what this is all about. So with that, we move forward, and I think this is pretty fascinating too. And we've talked about leaky run defenses a couple of times to undo the numbers, but this one I think is one of the more fascinating ones. The Los Angeles Chargers have been awful against the run. It was part of the reason why I was on Baltimore over the weekend against them. Look at all of these. These are all major run statistics, whether it's Football Outsiders, whether it's traditional metrics. You will note
that's as bad as it gets.
At 26th is the highest in which they rank in all of these, and that's defending power situations. Again, 3rd or 4th down, 2 yards or fewer to go, or goal to go, 2 yards or shorter to the touchdown. They're allowing conversion rates of 73%. But look at this: 162.5 yards per game, 5.4 yards per carry. Right? They're stuffing opponents at a 13% rate, the 3rd worst rate in the National Football League. Like, you just go down the list. It's been awful. But here's the thing, and this is why I think it's so intriguing. Brandon Staley, we can have a larger conversation about this. His defensive scheme lends itself to inviting the run, but there's inviting the run and there's not defending the run. Mm-hmm. They couldn't stop it against Cleveland. They couldn't stop it against Baltimore, and this is going to be a problem for them moving forward.
I'd agree with you.
That's bad, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people like to just emphasize on the positives. Look at Justin Herbert. I love Justin Herbert too. But you have to look at the Chargers' defense. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs' defense. Like in the AFC West, you've actually got some problems on the defensive side of the football with all 4 teams right now.
Yep.